This food forest produces hundreds of pounds of food a year. And the best part, it's mostly hands-off. No tilling, no daily weeding, no chemical inputs. Just a system designed to work with nature rather than against it. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a food forest blueprint that actually works. The layout, the water strategy, the management required, all of it. I'll show you how one food forest crushes modern farming in terms of productivity, while also healing the land, and how you can copy it on your own land. And if you want a free downloadable PDF version of this food forest blueprint, the link will be in the description below. Okay, so let's begin. Alright, so let me tell you about one of my favorite examples of food forest in action, Martin Crawford's food forest in England. I studied this project extensively, and what he has achieved there is absolutely mind-blowing. First, a bit of background. His food forest, or forest garden as he calls it, is located in Devon, England. So in a temperate climate with mild, wet winters and warm summers. It's 2 acres in size, and Martin established it from 1994 onwards. Now picture this. Over 500 different species of useful productive plants, all working and existing together like in a natural forest. So we are talking 7+ layers of vegetation, from towering canopy trees down to ground-hugging herbs. And get this, it produces several tons of food every year. Not just basic crops, but a stunning variety of fruits, nuts, herbs and vegetables. What I love most about Crawford's approach is how he shows us that working with nature by mimicking natural forest ecosystems can create incredibly productive food systems while actually helping the environment. And here's what really gets me excited. The food forest is designed so that plants actually feed other plants. To give you an example of this, here is an excerpt from Martin's book, Creating a Forest Garden, illustrating how he thinks about this, or better said, how he designs fertility. Here it says that to supply the potassium needs of one of the June berries, you need one comfrey plant. You just need its leaves and use them as mulch. So that's how one plant can supply the needs of the other in a food forest. This natural nutrient cycling means you barely need any fertilizers, and the diversity keeps pests in check naturally. No chemicals needed. And here's the kicker. Once established, food forests are surprisingly low maintenance. That's because they function very similar to wild nature. Sure, as Crawford himself admits, no garden runs itself completely, but compared to conventional farming, the difference is night and day. When it comes to management, you are looking at strategic tweaks rather than constant daily chores. You have occasional pruning to keep paths clear and light flowing, harvesting at the right times, and maybe adding some mulch here and there when needed. Okay, now let me deconstruct Martin's food forest and paint you a picture of what a food forest is and how it works. First, you can think of food forest as nature's self-running grocery store. We are basically creating a forest that feeds us. We intentionally design an ecosystem that mimics a natural forest, but is planted and maintained for food production. And here's the cool part. Once it's up and running, it practically takes care of itself. It's like having your own slice of forest that constantly keeps supplying you with food. Here's what makes it so special. You got multiple layers of vegetation working together, from tall fruit trees right down to ground covers. Every plant is carefully chosen, not just for what it can give us, think fruits, nuts and herbs, but also for how it helps its plant neighbors thrive. Some fix nitrogen in the soil, others attract beneficial insects, and some even help keep the pests away. And the benefits, they are pretty incredible. So the system keeps improving itself, the soil actually gets better over time. Once established, the system will be self-sustaining, meaning the food forest will require little maintenance. You get more food with way less work compared to traditional farming. It's also fantastic for wildlife, and it boosts biodiversity. And it's excellent at managing water, helping with absorbing the rainfall and recharging the groundwater. It is the holy grail of regenerative food production. Martin's approach shows us that working with nature rather than against it can create something truly remarkable and productive while actually helping our planet heal. Alright, so now let's get practical and talk about how it all works. First, let's discuss design and layout principles. One of the key design characteristics of food forests is their incredible biodiversity. In a food forest, you plant lots of different species together and they create this incredible ecosystem that basically takes care of itself. The plants work together to keep pests in check, build healthy soil, and give you fresh harvests all year round. The secret sauce is what we call the 7-layer structure, which mimics a young woodland and maximizes vertical growing space. So here is how it breaks down. First, we have the canopy, your tall fruit and nut trees at the top. Then we have the sub-canopy, smaller fruit trees and nitrogen fixers hanging out just below. Then we have the shrub layer. This is where your berry bushes and other shrubs thrive. Then we have the herbaceous layer, all your favorite perennial herbs and veggies. Then we have the ground cover layer, the carpet layer, so to speak. So think clover and creeping thyme protecting our soil. Then we have the root layer, so underground plants like daikon, radish that are breaking up the soil. And then finally we have the vertical layer, so the climbers like kiwis and beans that are using trees as their natural trellises. So here's what's really important to understand. These plants aren't just randomly placed. They are densely packed together in what we call a polyculture, with vines, climbing trees and herbs nested at their feet. Every available space is used, so which naturally keeps weeds down and pests at bay. Plus, you get to harvest different goodies at different heights throughout the season. And plants are grouped into what we call guilds, so basically plant communities where everyone helps each other out. They share nutrients, manage pests, attract pollinators, and even help suppress weeds. Like in the forest, every plant has its place within the ecosystem and keeps the system healthy and in balance. And here is a really interesting part. A food forest isn't static. It's designed to change over time, just like a natural forest. In the beginning, when the light is abundant and system is young, you might have a lot of fast-growing pinary species. These will help nurture the main productive species. You might also have more herbaceous perennials that need light. As time goes on, the slower-growing perennials take over. Eventually, you end up with this self-sustaining ecosystem that just keeps getting better. In terms of layout, there are 4 main ways people organize their food forests. First is the swale-based layout, which involves food forests planted along swales, water harvesting ditches on contour. Jeff Lawton is a master at this approach. Here, rows or fruit trees are planted on berms next to swales. Second is clustered guild layout, which features interconnected guilds of trees, shrubs, herbs, and ground cover, forming a natural forest pattern. An example of this would be mixed planting of apple trees, nitrogen-fixing shrubs, ground cover like clover, and companion plants. The third option is the patchwork or mosaic layout, with different zones of food forest arranged organically in patches. Each patch has its own character, but they all work together to create a productive system. An example of this would be wetland zone with willows and waterline plants, a sunny orchard zone, and a shady nut tree zone. And finally, there is the linear layout with neat alleys between plants. This is also an option, but usually for the food forest, people opt in for other layouts. This layout is more common of a permaculture orchard type of system, which I'll talk about in another video. This video is the first in our series 5 farm designs that can heal the planet, and we'll be covering permaculture orchards next. So make sure to hit that subscribe button to get notified once we release it. And don't forget to get the free downloadable PDF version of the food forest blueprint we are discussing right now. The link is in the video description below. Okay, now let's talk about water management strategy. When it comes to water management, a food forest naturally captures and stores water. The combination of leaf litter and deep root systems allows rainwater to infiltrate and remain stored in the soil, just like in a native forest. In some climates, such as in the UK, this natural water management system may be all you need. In most cases, however, you'll need to shape the land for water harvesting and absorption. This is typically done with swales, shallow trenches dug along the land contour with a mound or a berm on the downhill side. Swales capture rainwater runoff by slowing and spreading it across the landscape, allowing water to percolate into the soil rather than wash away. Trees and deep-rooted plants planted on the berms benefit from this system. When rain falls, water collects in the swale, soaks in the berm, and deeply nourishes the tree roots. This passive irrigation system helps sustain trees through dry spells by maintaining soil moisture. Alternatively, depending on your context, you could opt for a more active irrigation approach and set up rainwater catchment system, like a pond or dam, to store water for irrigation. This water can then be supplied via drip irrigation pipes when needed. However, this hands-on approach is more characteristic of a permaculture orchard. In a food forest, you want to move away from this type of active management. Alright, let's talk about animals next. In food forest, animals are naturally integrated into the ecosystem. This primarily involves poultry such as chickens, ducks and geese to prepare the soil, manage weeds and fertilize the soil. Depending on the layout, you could integrate medium to large size livestock like sheep and cattle. However, for a more hands-free approach, poultry would be the ideal livestock choice. In terms of management, some of the key management tasks that require most time and attention in food forest maintenance are pruning and canopy management, gield and polyculture maintenance, fertility management, animal integration. When it comes to pruning and canopy management, this involves annual pruning of fruit and nut trees to shape growth and remove dead or diseased wood, thinning dense canopies to help sunlight reach lower layers like herbs and ground covers, pollarding or coppicing fast-growing trees providing mulch, fodder or firewood, all the way through chop and drop mulching, where pruned branches and leaves are left on the ground to decompose and enrich the soil. Another major task is gield and polyculture maintenance. This includes sourcing and growing plants, expanding existing patches and replanting as needed. The system requires constant fine-tuning and attention to plant arrangements, so there is a constant focus on plants. Then there is fertility management, inoculating the soil with fungi and beneficial microorganisms, feeding the soil with nutrient-rich organic materials like compost and manure, and mulching, especially in the early stages of food forest development. Finally, if you're integrating animals, livestock and animal management are involved. Poultry is relatively low maintenance, but if you are planning on using bigger livestock, this will involve more active management, adjusting fencing, providing water, and so on. With poultry, all of this is minor task. Food forests can be adapted to a wide range of climates. In general, if a natural forest or woodland exists in your climate, you can design a food forest in that climate too, using native analogs as a guide. Food forests flourish in temperate, subtropical, and tropical climates, providing ideal conditions for diverse perennial plants to thrive. Forest gardens have been practiced for millennia in tropical regions. Home gardens in parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America sustain families with fruits, tubers, and spices year-round. The tropics' abundant sunlight reaches even the lower layers, enabling year-round growth and creating lush, multi-layered forests with ease. Temperate climates also support food forests well, but due to lower sun angles and dense canopy cover, they require thoughtful design to ensure understory plants receive enough light. To address this, temperate food forests typically feature wider spacing between plants and deciduous trees that let winter sunlight reach the ground. In arid climates, water is a limiting factor, obviously, so it all depends on whether you can provide enough water to sustain growing trees. In terms of topography, food forests can be adapted to both slopes and flatland. Mid-slope areas tend to be frost-free, while lower areas often have deeper soils that suit certain tree species. But overall, unless you are in a flood zone or on a really steep slope, you are good to go. Finally, and most importantly, you can grow and adapt a food forest to various contexts, from a quarter-acre backyard garden to few acres at most, depending on your resources, of course. So you can transform any size piece of land into a food forest. You just need to start. Imagine walking a land 5 or 10 years from now. Birdsong in a canopy, herbs at your feet, fruit within reach. No back-breaking hard physical labor, no stress. Just a healthy living ecosystem that takes care of itself, producing in abundance. All because one day you dared to plant your food forest. 7 years ago, I dared to plant a food forest on my remote property in the mountains of Croatia. Despite being constantly stretched for time and working with a challenging site, I managed to create a healthy, increasingly edible landscape for my family. By following the principles outlined in this video and establishing the food forest slowly, year by year, what seemed daunting became achievable. So if you're ready to start, grab the free PDF in the description. It's your first steps towards this kind of future. I'll see you soon. Bye.